Welcome, everyone, to the Coach and Flourish podcast. I'm your host, John Andrew Williams. We're here with Britt Fulmer today. How's everyone doing? How are you, Britt?
I'm doing good. Keeping busy. Lots of good stuff coming for CTEDU in the next couple months that we're working on. So feeling good.
Yeah, me too. I'm feeling pretty excited about the progress. Where everything is at too. It just feels like we're in a good spot and continuing to get better with things. Yeah, a lot of good things in the works.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's jump in. Let's get to our first question.
Yeah. So there's been a couple of questions about this in classes the past couple of weeks. So I figured I'd dive in. So I hate taking what we were just was like a positive moment into more of like the dark side of coaching, so to speak. But one of the biggest questions I've been getting a lot lately is how do you manage it when a client says something disagreeable or maybe even morally incongruent with your own beliefs in a coaching session?
Right. So it's happened to me a handful of times in my career. You have a couple choices, and one of them is, one of them's around ending the session and just saying, you know what, I think that this is not a great fit, or you just end it. You end the coaching agreement. I've done that. It's unpleasant. It's not fun. There were hurt feelings, a little bit of fallout in around the clients that they were also connected with. Had to clean that up a little bit. But I was in a spot where I didn't want to continue. It just wasn't. It was obvious, and it wasn't the kind of thing that I would say, "Oh, sorry, like let me make it better." I don't really mean that. It's not. It's just okay to let it go. That's option one. Option two is to ignore it, and I've talked to other coaches about that. I'm not a fan. I think it's worth addressing, and either addressing it and clearing it up, or addressing it and discontinuing the conversation. Discontinuing the coaching contract. It's very rare, but it does happen. And I think it's empowering for the coach to also say no.
Yeah, I think that's why what's coming up was some of the coaches were concerned about, you know, one of the things that I talk about is one of the big differences between counseling and coaching is that we do have a little bit more say over what our clients look like and what types of clients we want to attract to ourselves. And if we are uncomfortable in a session, that we have just as much of a right as our clients do to end that session and or end the coaching client agreement. Um, so I guess, that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, when this happens, what you said it's rare, but it could, especially for those coaches who are looking to go long term. It sounds like you did manage a breakup. What advice do you have for other coaches who may be struggling with a client on their roster that was really not the best fit for them, but maybe that client is still hanging on? And, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's maybe looking to build the confidence to maybe have a breakup conversation? Breakup, I use that term lightly.
Yeah. Well, when I did it, I've done this, like I said, a handful of times. One of the first times I didn't do it very well, and the client felt like they were being rejected. And that was not my intention. It wasn't, it was more of, I don't think I am the right coach for this person. Not that this person is uncoachable or that it can't work. And this wasn't even, like, they didn't say anything. It wasn't even like a breakup because of, like, they said something morally reprehensible. It was more around, I just didn't think they were a good fit for me as a coach. So there's a sensitivity there. I think when people go to a coaching session, they open up, they share things that they have never shared with anyone, and they're sharing it with a relative stranger. And then if that stranger says, you know what, I'm not interested in working with you, that's hard. That's not a fun place to be. So there's a little bit of that. Is this coach for me? Am I a good fit? When from the client standpoint, the client's going into that thinking these things. I think there needs to be a sensitivity in honoring a care given. And if it's not if you know that client's not for you, then I would recommend other steps, like try this person instead, or here's another place to go. I mean, that's best practice in doing these things. Here, hold on. I'm gonna tell Daisy too. It's our little puppy. She got out. Hold on, put it back.
That's fine. Yeah. I'll just keep talking to our folks who are here. So one of the things that I was mentioning in class too about this conversation is we want to be conscientious of how and where in the conversation did this statement or thing come up. So I know in one of the classes I was talking to, they were talking about this person kind of made an off-color joke. So it does that rise to the level of a breakup? I guess it depends on how upset you are over the joke, but I do think that that's an opportunity for us to think through, okay, is this worth a conversation? We want to prevent this from happening again in the future. We want to be comfortable with our clients, and we want our clients to be comfortable with us. So I think there's a tactful way to go about saying to your client, hey, that joke that you made earlier, that joke you made just now, like that made me a little uncomfortable. And again, you want to decide when and how you want to bring this up with your client. So do you bring it up right in the moment? Do you bring it up at the end of the session? You want to feel out and know what your client is thinking about, or I'm sorry, not know what they're thinking about, but you want to feel out, maybe where they are in their session. If they're in the midst of their session and they're digging in deep and they made this off-color comment, maybe wait till the end of the session, you close out the end of the session and you say, hey, and by the way, I'm really glad we got some good action steps today. I'm really looking forward to see how this proceeds for next week. I did want to mention earlier, though, that you made X comment and it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Just want to make sure that we can stay on the same page about, X, Y, or Z, depending on what the comment is in reference to. Of course, if they make like a really reprehensible comment or they say something truly awful, then you can decide to elevate that conversation further. And like John said, end the session right there. But we want to be careful. I was just explaining, John, that, in my session with the coaches I was talking to, I was saying that it depends on like the level of severity of the comments, or has this been building up over time? And at what point do you maybe redesign an alliance around it and have a conversation at the beginning of a new session, or address it right then and there, or wait to the end of the session? So it's just being mindful of, how deep in the session is your client, and do you want to interrupt the session for it? And if you feel like that would be inappropriate, then waiting to the end of the session or the beginning of a next session to bring it up and address it is perfectly acceptable. Because I was saying, I think right after you walked away, I was saying it came up in class because somebody had a client who made a off-color joke. Mm-hmm. And they thought it was kind of funny, but it was offensive to the coach. So how did they manage that thing? And does that joke lead to some insights into who that person is and whether or not they want to work with that person or whatnot? So I was just saying, maybe thinking through those things.
Right. And it's super rare. Like I'm trying to think back, only a handful. I think I've logged over 3,500 hours of coaching. We're talking less than 5 of that. And one of them, I mean, some of them, it's not necessarily they say something that's offensive as much as they want to be coached on something that I just don't agree with. Like, for instance, I was working with a student and they wanted me to coach them on how they could be better playing video games. I'm thinking, okay, like it's just not for me. This isn't what I want to do. I don't believe in them. I think they have created, challenges and pain for high school students and teenagers. And I know that some people love them, and I know there's a whole community out there, and it's fine, but it's just not for me, and it's not for me to coach. So there can be topics too like that you just don't agree with, and that's okay. It's okay to end those coaching relationships. I was at a conference and I was listening to Marshall Goldsmith talk about his client. He's an executive coach. He works with a lot of very big organizations, like CEOs, leaders of big organizations. And he made a joke about how if he wanted to become a better coach, he had to get better clients, and how he started firing all the clients who weren't doing well, who weren't making progress, who weren't taking steps, who weren't doing the things, and only working with people who were taking steps, doing the things. And I thought about it because it's a lot like those writing apps that will delete your writing if you don't do it after a certain day, or if they don't perform, then it's a no-go. And that is interesting. That's it. What if you told your client base, look, I only work with people who are successfully taking the action steps. If you aren't taking the action steps, then you're not a good client fit for me. That's amazing. And so, I mean, he's on stage. You don't know how much he's really doing that as a regular practice, but he made a good point, and it's interesting to consider.
Yeah, I think you're kind of bringing me to my next question, which is, okay, so how do you set yourself up to attract the right clients for your business?
Right. When I first started, I mean, it's like any coach, you take everybody and you try so hard to get anybody. It's a stage, and perhaps some people who have financial means, they don't have to go through that stage, but we didn't. We were living on literally just love and scholarship. Like we had no money, very little, and it was like a month to month thing, and it became a kind of idea where if you want to attract a really solid client base, then you need to figure out like what's the problem, or what are the sets of challenges that you enjoy most in your own life, having overcome and looking at, and then working with that client group. And if you are providing value, then your client base will your client base will follow. And so the bigger question is, like, if you were to look at yourself from a third person standpoint, or just what from the sky, what value are you producing for humanity? And if you can clearly answer that question, then it helps clarify marketing. It helps clarify your, how you can attract the client base that you want. It's asking not how can I get the best client base, but how can I give the most value? And that's the question. It's like an incessant, there's a discipline around it, myself included. There's discipline. It's not what can I get from this situation, it's how much can I give. And client bases follow. They follow.
Yeah, I love that. One of my classes yesterday, we were talking about, or maybe late last week, we were talking about mission statements and how they can be a really nice anchor point. And I was smiling as you were talking because I kind of on the spot came up with a mission statement for myself, because I had one, but I couldn't remember it verbatim. I have it written down somewhere. So I just made one up. And as I was making it up, I was like, actually, I think this is my new, I love this. And it was such a clarifying moment as I was teaching, even because you're right. I was realizing some of the ways I could structure my business now around this mission statement. So I really love that. One of the recommendations I was giving, which I think I originally got from being here, is as you're setting up your business, one of the best things that I did for myself was I just created a little caricature of who my ideal client was. So, it was like Susie, and, she was struggling with this, and this that I was able to address. And these are the types of things and, like you were just saying, the value I could provide. These are the problems I was going to help her solve and overcome. And these are the goals that she wanted. But what was really important to me, just like the gentleman you were just speaking about, was that this was a person who already had started on the journey and wasn't waiting for somebody to get them started. Because I was realizing early on in my practice that the people who are waiting for someone to get them started, I felt like I was walking behind them, pushing them along. And it wasn't until I re-clarified and said, I really want to work with people who have started their writing projects already, that I felt like I was walking side by side with them as we went through the coaching process. So I like what you're saying. It's really important that there's that value piece and that mission piece tied to what you're doing. Earlier, you mentioned too, if you do have a client who, unfortunately just doesn't work out, you had talked about, being able to refer to maybe another coach. And I feel like that highlights the importance of networking. And I'm curious, like, what your tips are for networking with other coaches and how to get, I think some people feel hesitant to do that because they don't want to feel like another coach is going to steal away their clients. But it's really important actually that you have a community of coaches in your, your network and your circle. So what are some tips that you have for our coaches about networking with other coaches who might be able to support and help their businesses thrive?
Mm-hmm. I think it's hard sometimes for coaches to get over doing that because they feel like all the other coaches are also competition. And that is hard, especially when you're starting out and you're thinking every person could be a potential client and every coach is a potential competitor. And this is where I think having the value of a specialty is really important, because then you can really specialize. And when you're talking to someone, you're saying, I coach like these kind of people. Like this is my target audience. The profiles you've chosen, the challenges you choose to address, and then when you work with a number of coaches, you get your other coaches together. You realize the power of being able to refer people, and it really both people win when you do that. I had a few therapists I worked with, and we would send people back and forth. I would consult with her sometimes if there was something that came up. That was really valuable. And same with her. She knew the limit of what she did really well, and then when she felt like someone was ready, she would pass them to me. And that professional relationship was amazing. I also had my classmates. Those are pretty common people to connect with. And in Portland, there are a couple coaches here. That I connect with on a regular basis. But it's the real competitor is not other coaches. The real competitor is indifference. It's a client thinking, oh, I don't need a coach. I can do this on my own. And they can. They'll just be 20 to 30% on average more successful, more efficient, more effective if you're working with a coach. 20 to 30% is what some of the research says. And I think being coached myself, I feel like that's about right.
Yeah, I love that. I think that networking piece is, for a while there, I was working with a speech coach, somebody who helped people write speeches, because and it was really great because I'm not a speaker. And so when I have my folks who are writing books and articles and they want to now speak, I was referring them to that coach who was a speaking coach, because cool. And when that coach had people who wanted to take their speaking and put a book together, he sent them my way. And so there is a value in figuring out too. I think the other piece of that networking is to find other coaches who complement what you do and add them to your network. So I'm a writing coach, so having a coach who helps people with their public speaking is really beneficial to me. There's some common issues that I notice writers face. So having coaches who are specific to those common issues can be really helpful as well. So knowing what complements your business and then finding those coaches who complement your business and adding them to your network can be mutually beneficial too. All right. So I guess then my last question then for today would just be, when we think in the big picture wise of, client breakups and preparing for the right type of client for your business, what we talked about, like more of the external pieces of it, but as far as like internal preparation, internal business preparation, what sort of tips or tricks would you have for, what needs to happen in your mind to get you in a place where you're ready to take on your ideal clients that are ready to hit the ground running with?
Right. And I think so like someone caught a lizard outside or something. I don't know. There's like so much commotion outside as you're asking the question. So how do you get focused and deal with people and get to a space when you're actually providing value? And all of this madness is happening. Yeah, I think it was. I've heard from other coaches. They have like little like rituals they go through. They have a kind of a mind emotion cleanse. Coach I worked with for a while, she would listen to music, and then I'd call her and hear this crazy, like super loud music in the background, and then she'd just be right there, and she had her own system of getting ready for sessions. I always felt it really easy to get ready for a session, and in fact, it felt I don't know, just comforting, like a fish going back into water, like oh, okay, here we are again, like just slipping right back into it, and it takes maybe 5 seconds, and I'm back into empathetic mode. So I've seen the range, people, and I think more important from a coaching standpoint, just business standpoint, life standpoint, having a morning ritual, having something that you do in the morning time that is really, really valuable. For me, and usually there's like a key piece to that. And for me, it's reading something else. It's reading something inspiring. It's getting a new idea. And I know this plays into my strength of love of learning, where I'd love to learn something. I like to figure out something, like here we are. And if I can get that right from the get-go in the morning time, it's like, okay, like it orients me towards, I think, a learning, like more towards learning goals, more towards growth mindset, more towards, okay, I know I'm gaining knowledge today. If I don't do that, if I jump right in, and some days I do just because the nature of pressure, I realize I'm in more of a performative zone. I'm trying to get things done. And it's useful to know what zone you're in, what zone works for you, what do you need right now. Can I do performance zone first and then learning zone second? It's a little challenging, but that's like going for exercise in the afternoon. Afternoon exercisers, I am in awe of. I feel like that's amazing. So I think that's the more important piece to me is, do you have something that is, something in your day that grounds you, gets you in that mindset that you want to be in? I feel like that's more important than the before session.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, zooming out even further, like when I think back to starting my business, I realize that had I not had not just the education that CTEDU provided, but the practice, I think one of the most important things that you can do to prepare for your ideal clients once you're ready for like those like gem clients that you want to be coaching is to practice. So if I had started my business at the same time I was starting my 1.0 and I pulled in my ideal clients, I don't know that I would have been as effective. Actually, I know that I would probably not have been as effective without the education, but the practice, getting out the nervousness and being able to really like hone my skills with the practice clients that we had in our program. So I really feel like I can't emphasize enough that if you are in a space where you are saying, I'm ready to, I want to pull in these ideal clients that are, going to get me to the place I need to be with my business, but you're feeling hesitant at all and you're still in the coaching practice, take advantage of your practice in class, take advantage of the power hours, take advantage of the coaching pods. Even if you're not in class anymore and you still feel hesitant, like we offer those coaching pods. You can still join our power hours. There's workshops. You can reach out to us and think about how we can connect you with other coaches who might still want practice. But I do feel like, taking advantage of the resources that CTEDU has is really an empowering way to prepare yourself for these clients that you're just ready, that are going to take your business to the next level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know some coaches, they'll keep a sheet, like one sheet of powerful questions on their, just out there on the desk, not to read them, but to be reminded of them, or a list of the different topics or tools. I know we've created one sheets for that, and people, PDFs, they just print them off, and that's useful. I think now when I have big presentations, and I know I have to be on my A game for them, I prepare. Like I treat it like it's even an hour or two ahead of time. I'll rehearse it. I'll mentally rehearse it. I'll think through it. I'll visualize all the aspects I want to hit. If it's really that big of a deal, then I think it's something worth preparing for. Otherwise, if it feels like it's a normal part of your routine in your life, you have to create a system to be able to jump in. That's what I found works for me.
Yeah.
And other people. We've had these conversations. And it's kind of fun too. Opening, closing ceremony days. How do you open your day? How do you close your day? What outfits do you change into? I feel like I have progressive, chill outfits as the immediate after work outfit change when you're working from home. It's important. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. That was all my questions.
That's fun. This is really fun. I love Q&A. I love a good Q&A. And thanks, Britt, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for watching. This has been another Q&A episode of the Coach and Flourish podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.